This week on Technicolor Blood, new projects for Chris Hemsworth and John Krasinski.
And we have the latest rumors on Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
All that and a whole lot more. Here we go. Technicolor Blood, welcome back everyone. Appreciate you tuning in as always. My name's Chris, I'm here with Terrence.
Hey everybody, glad you could make it.
Glad you could make it. The weather's starting to turn. I think all of us getting a little bit better mood when it starts to cool off a little bit, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and movies start to slowly teeter toward the award season selections.
Yeah, we start seeing trailers for the winter films coming up, and that sort of last push into Oscar season, like you said. Mm-hmm. So it's a good time to talk about some movies, so why don't we do that? That's what we're here for, after all.
That's why I showed up.
That's why he showed up. Okay. So let's start off with a little bit of news that sort of snuck under my radar somehow. Chris Hemsworth has wrapped shooting on a Men in Black reboot. I did not even know about this. I did not know there was a thirst for a Men in Black reboot. I didn't know that Men in Black was old enough to merit a reboot. I didn't know that Men in Black was good enough to merit a reboot. There's just a lot of things I did not know.
I feel like people have really fond memories of the first one. You know,
was it that long ago? It really was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a real long time ago.
Okay.
It was when Will Smith was just a young pup.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I only knew about this film because Chris Hemsworth was attached to it. I'm pretty sure that's all that's worth knowing about this film. And I mean, maybe it'll be good. As we've mentioned in the past, he's really, really good at comedy. So he's a great choice for it. And I guess I'm kind of curious to see if they can find something fresh to do with that concept.
It's directed by F. Gary Gray, who, of course, has done more recently the Fate of the Furious, and a movie I actually really liked called Straight Outta Compton. Those are his last couple of projects. The movie also stars Liam Neeson and Kumail Nanjiani. So there's a couple actors there that looks like it could be a fun cast. I could see Kumail and Chris Hemsworth playing off each other pretty well, though I don't know, what their respective roles are.
That's an interesting director choice.
Yeah. He F. Gary Gray probably could do pretty much whatever he wanted to after pretty much any of those guys who step into the Fast and the Furious series of movies. Just those are just such automatic hits that they could just kind of do what they want afterwards. And Straight Outta Compton, if I'm not mistaken, was a pretty big box office hit. It was pretty well critically acclaimed, and just pop culture wise, it was hugely popular. Yeah,
and I believe it was also a really, really high return on the investment sort of thing. I don't believe it was a very big budget film, but the return was big.
Yeah, that'll definitely get you a call back from Hollywood if you can turn that around like he did. So, I did not love the original series of Men in Black movies. Yeah, the first one was great. Beyond that, I know I didn't even see whatever the last one was. I feel like we've had that discussion a lot of times on the show before where, a series of movie comes out, oh, that first one was pretty good, and then they just kind of peter out, and I don't bother to see the last one.
Yeah, well, I think both you and I have that feature of our personalities where if something starts going bad, we just pull the ripcord on it. Our loyalty to anything doesn't extend past the point where it's not having the impact that we expect it to have.
Oh, and I failed to mention that his co-star in this movie is actually Tessa Thompson, who he starred with in Thor Ragnarok.
Oh,
so that's actually kind of an interesting little pairing. Yeah, he shared a picture from the set where he and Tessa Thompson were both wearing their black Men in Black suits. So I presume that means that they're the pair, a la Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith from the original.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So moving on to some development news, John Krasinski, most notably known recently for A Quiet Place, and of course starred in the American version of The Office for so long.
And now starring in Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan, yep. The Jack Ryan series, the infamous Jack Ryan series. The guy's just carved out quite a little career for himself. And he apparently is now writing the sequel to A Quiet Place. Apparently, initially, he didn't have interest in continuing to work that project. From what I read, he had told Emily Blunt that, he enjoyed making the movie. It was great. He loved doing it with his wife, and he just wanted to leave that as sort of a standalone, singular experience in their lives, and he just kind of wanted to walk away from it. He basically told Paramount to go on without him, develop the second one. And I guess they've had some issues getting a script in place. And Krasinski had said, I have a little kernel of an idea that I'm working on. He didn't reveal what it was, of course. But over the course of several conversations, Paramount had convinced him, and he had decided, you know what, I am going to take a crack at this. So I did not see in the article whether or not he's going to direct it. I would assume he would. I don't see why he wouldn't after he did the first one. But he is going to go ahead and start writing the script for the sequel. I enjoyed that movie, and I don't know what they can do with the sequel, but do you have interest in that?
I do, yeah, because like you, I enjoy the film a lot, and I think John Krasinski, as you kind of laid out there, he was pivotal to that. He had the idea, he wrote it, he directed it, he starred in it. Like you mentioned, Emily Blunt is his wife, so it was a family project. He's gone on record saying some things about how like the story is actually about family, and he was thinking about his own daughter when he wrote it. So I think he has a strong personal connection to the characters, to that family that the movie is about. So yeah, I'm very interested, and I'm more interested, in fact, knowing that he's involved than I ever would have been if he hadn't been involved. Yeah,
to give him the ability to control that, to continue that story that he started. So many times they just hand it off to someone who had nothing to do with it, and 9 times out of 10 it just isn't worth watching.
Right.
It's kind of been an interesting year for actors directing. We've had Bradley Cooper with A Star Is Born. We got Krasinski with A Quiet Place, which I think A Quiet Place was his directorial debut. Yeah, that was sort of the big deal about it.
Yep.
So quite a year for that sort of thing. We may have to gather up some more examples of this and see if some of these other actors have made that transition as successfully as these two guys. I mean, Krasinski, I still think acting wise, it's probably just me from being used to him in The Office and some of the other stuff he's done. I don't want to say he's one note, but sometimes I just can't buy him in the role that he's playing.
Yeah.
But I thought he was fine in that. I thought he actually did a pretty competent job directing that movie as well, considering they had that sort of gimmicky thing where the movie was basically silent for the entire time. There was hardly any dialogue in it.
Right.
And I don't think they used that as too much of a crutch. He didn't lean on it too much. I thought he did pretty well with it. So I was kind of surprised by his directing performance.
Yeah, I thought it was all very polished and A-list the entire way. So I'm excited to know that he's back on. And for what it's worth, I thought Emily Blunt was really, really good in that. I mean, she's pretty much really good in everything she does.
She's awesome.
And this was no exception. So I'm eager to see where they go with her character moving forward in the I guess series now.
Yeah, well, we have some. I have some TV development news I want to get to also, but first, why don't you tell us about the latest thing going on with Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
Okay, well, it's just a little tidbit of information. It's kind of a rumor, but I believe that the source of the rumor is a pretty solid one. But it basically just boils down to this, that Guardians of the Galaxy might not start filming until as late as February of 2021.
Man.
So to put that into perspective, before James Gunn was let go on the project, it was slated to be released in 2020. So it would have been shooting right now. Now we're talking about a 2021 start date for filming, and those films have heavy effects added onto the end of them. So their post-production is a pretty long run. So there's almost no way that film could see release before 2022. So that would be like a 5-year gap between Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And all of this within the context of they haven't even announced a director for it yet. So that filming start date is being pushed out as far as it is, probably because they realize that they still are hunting for someone to come on. And then whoever that someone is, they're going to want to play with that screenplay. No director, especially no director making a big budget film, is going to join a project where he doesn't get to graft that screenplay into the kind of movie he wants to make. So if you're a fan of that series, and I know most people are,
sure.
You're just going to have to be patient.
Kind of curious where the MCU, the Marvel comic universe goes from now, because they've had so many movies coming back to back, and it seems like there's just a little bit of a slowdown coming. Obviously, they have the final, well, I don't know, the Infinity War continuance coming up, but in this article that you'd shown me from this news about Guardians of the Galaxy 3, it mentions that somewhere around that same time they'll be shooting Black Widow and possibly Black Panther 2,
Wow.
and also possibly a sequel to Doctor Strange. So, which I didn't realize. I mean, that was the world liked that movie a lot more than we did.
Right, that's true.
It was actually a pretty big critical hit, box office wise. I don't think it was a mega success, but certainly big enough to merit a sequel.
Although I do think that was kind of on the bubble for a while. Like,
Really?
Usually Marvel announces the sequel plans pretty quickly after the release of the previous film. And I know Doctor Strange, they were quiet on that one for a little while.
Yeah, it's a little odd that they had this pipeline that was going strong for so long, and now it seems like there's just going to be a little bit of a break there. We have Captain Marvel coming up, obviously, and then again that next Infinity War movie, and then a little bit of a light time until some of these other ones start hitting. I guess when's the next Spider-Man movie coming out? That's not this summer, is it?
They just wrapped it this past week, so
probably summer
of next year.
Yeah,
right.
next year. Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to hit a little bit of television news real quick. I thought this was interesting. I don't know if it's good, but ABC is developing I guess you could call it a sequel to the historically critically acclaimed NYPD Blue series from way back in the day. And it is supposed to be centered around Sipwith's son. If you aren't familiar with that show, it's probably not a good time to go into the history of NYPD Blue, but you had the main character, one of the most iconic characters in recent television history,
right?
Andy Sipwith,
played by Dennis Franz.
Yeah, Dennis Franz, the late great Dennis Franz, if I'm not mistaken. And so centering a cop show around his son, gimmicky, but if they can maybe get some of the same folks to come back and work on it, some of those folks are no longer with us.
Yes.
So that might be a tall order. But honestly, just not to change the conversation really, but network television, there used to be a handful of decent cop shows or procedural shows. And lately, granted, I haven't given a lot of them a really good chance, but it just seems like kind of a wasteland to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, police dramas are evergreen, so they're always on, but they definitely have an ebb and flow in terms of how dramatic they are, how edgy they are, how realistic they are, and we're right now in one of those stretches where they're all just very procedural driven, a lot of family affair kind of shows, the kind of edgy police drama that Hill Street Blues was and in NYPD Blue, we're definitely not in one of those time periods. So it's kind of perfect for one of those to come along and kind of shake that up a little bit.
Yeah, using sort of a crutch of developing this around Sipwith's son, that might be a good entry point for them, but they're going to obviously need to kick up the writing quite a bit from what's out there right now. If they can somehow replicate some of the excitement around the original, that would be great. It's one of those things where NYPD Blue was one of those historic shows that took a lot of chances. I want to say maybe it was the first network show that toyed with nudity back in the day.
That's right.
So that was a big deal. They might have even been one of the ones that was pushing the borders a little bit for language. Mm-hmm. And so it got that show a lot of attention, good and bad. And it was one of those times where I think they just thought, well, any publicity is good publicity. And that show was hugely highly rated. It was critically acclaimed. And of course, as it went on, as shows do, they start to come apart at the seams a little bit. But
heavy turnover in the cast for sure.
Yeah. But the great, when you're talking about American television, and I specify that because American television has that reputation for just running it into the ground relentlessly until it's so beyond what it ever was, and it's just so completely dead. That I kind of think you have to say, with American TV, you say, how good are the strongest seasons compared to other American shows' strongest seasons? Because pretty much all of them end up having a couple of weak seasons if they run more than 3 or 4 seasons. Mm-hmm. And NYPD Blue is one of those that I would put up against. One of those few shows that I'd put up against almost anything as far as their strongest seasons.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And let's be honest, the main play here is network television is trying to compete with cable channels, which are just killing it right now.
Right.
And and the streaming services as well. They're attracting all the best talent, and they're giving them the freedom to make the best kind of television they can make right now. And the networks can't really offer that. I feel like this is maybe them trotting out maybe, like you said, something gimmicky, but it cracks the door open to say, hey, remember this was our edgy show where we tried to push the boundaries. This is us doing it again.
Right.
This is us trying to make a network show that can compete with these cable and streaming dramas.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what their hook is beyond the fact that it's Sipwith's son.
Yeah.
If they're going to actually try to bring in some of the writers that might still be around from the original show, just I'd be curious to see how they're going to handle that. But it's a little bit ways away yet. But this sort of golden age of television that a lot of people have commented on in the last 20 years or so, kind of starting around when I think The Sopranos came out.
Yeah.
I think the biggest change is that they're just able to attract all this A-list talent. I mean, you have Idris Elba doing Luther, a cop show that's one of the better ones on Netflix, and he still comes back and does it. They've got Benedict Cumberbatch doing Sherlock Holmes, which is not really the same thing, but sort of in that purview as well.
It's a procedural.
And you just can't attract that kind of talent to CBS, ABC, NBC, and Fox for whatever reason. It just it's got to be one of those cable or streaming services.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that just must comes down to who the creative freedom that those guys are given on those platforms, and network television just can't offer it.
Yeah, it makes me wonder too if eventually there's going to be the inevitable comeback of 24. Like that gets floated every couple of years. I hear they might come back with another 24 series.
Yeah, it wasn't the plan to do like a prequel where it's young Jack Ryan?
Or Jack Bauer.
Yeah.
I don't remember that one, but I know a few years ago they actually did that sequel season. It just sort of a one-off of, I think, 12 or 13 episodes. It wasn't a full 24 episode order, and it was I forget the lead guy who played the role, but it was okay. I tuned in just sort of out of curiosity, and then when the show ended, I just assumed that it was going to be 24 episodes, but it was only like 12 or 13. So when it ended, I thought, oh, that was quite anticlimactic. All right, so we're going to come back after a quick break here and have a little fun with Hollywood creature effects. Looking over the hashtag film Twitter today on Twitter, I had come across one that I thought was kind of interesting with Halloween approaching. And the question was, what are your favorite / what do you think are the best movie creatures? And of course, a flood of those just popped into my brain. I'll kick us off with, I don't know if it's my favorite. I'm just going to sort of name a couple of them. We didn't really talk about this before the show too much. So we're just going to kind of let this come off the top of our heads. So I'll just start with one and then you can come back with another. Sure. I'll start with The Predator, the original 1987 Predator, one of the best action movies of that era. Love the creature.
Yeah.
They did such a great job shooting it. They did such a great job pitting it against Arnold Schwarzenegger in the finale of that movie. The way his mouth worked, I guess I would call it his mandible, whatever you want to call it. Like that was super creepy to me. The crazy dreads. I mean, just one of the most iconic movie creatures ever, and certainly in my top 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to be top 3. And one of the things that makes it so effective is that they plant it in a jungle. It's not running around on a soundstage or whatever. You see this crazy creature and it's like covered in mud, and you see it interacting with nature. And I mean, it makes it seem so natural. It's like you're watching an actual animal or monster or whatever in the real world.
Stalking his prey.
Yeah, it was very, very effective to put that design in that setting. Have you ever seen the photos of the original creature design for Predator?
I don't recall seeing that, no.
Yeah, so famously before the version that was actually used in the movie, they shot some footage with another creature design, and it was famously played by Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah, and not too long ago, there was, I guess, a behind-the-scenes documentary about Predator that was released, and it included some still photos of that creature design, and it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Thankfully, apparently, the director kind of got the sense that it wasn't working, but on top of that, Jean-Claude Van Damme was unhappy doing it. He was unhappy that his face wasn't being shown. He was uncomfortable in the suit. I guess he kind of famously just threw a fit about it, so they halted production to recast the creature, and that gave them the chance to go back and just start from scratch. So they went to, I believe, Rick Baker, famous makeup artist Rick Baker's studio, and said, look, we're in the middle of production. We're trying to make this movie. we can't use the monster we've got. Can you just come up with something for us? And in like some insanely short period of time, like 6 or 8 weeks or something, they started with nothing, and then they delivered the Predator creature costume to the jungles of Mexico so they could start filming.
That's crazy. Wow. It's amazing what pressure will do. A short deadline and pressure.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right about that. So let me hit you back with, obviously, there's one alien that is the obvious next choice, but instead I'm going to swerve a little bit and say,
I thought you might.
What about the T-800 from the Terminator films?
Okay.
That's the metallic robot skeleton creature that is actually lurking inside of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, the one that comes out of the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great one. I was thinking in terms of, the fleshy movie monsters, but that's actually a great one. And an absolutely frightening image that James Cameron really knew how to shoot.
Yeah, especially when you consider how low budget that first Terminator film is.
Yep.
And yet the footage with the creature, it's so effective.
We were obviously kids when that movie came out, and as I've said many times before, I saw that movie way too young. So that scene at the end where the Terminator is on its hand, it doesn't have any legs anymore. I think it's just pulling its torso along, chasing Sarah Connor through the little metal compactor thing. I mean, that was terrifying to me when I was a kid. Absolutely.
And the thing that I always loved about it, that I thought was so kind of revolutionary, is the idea that, this is a robot cyborg that's, obviously designed to look like a human. And they just basically took a human skeleton and turned that into a robot. And I just thought that was brilliant, like why would it have anything else? Like, why wouldn't that be exactly what was underneath the cyborg skin?
Right. Yeah. And also the sort of in between in that movie of Schwarzenegger when his face is starting to get torn up a little bit, and he's got like his eyes, the covering on his eyes gone, so you see the red, and he's got the shrapnel and the holes in his face. I mean, that's the kind of thing now that would just be CGI, I think, for the most part. And because it was actual makeup back then, I feel like we're not going to see that kind of thing too much going forward. So, and the fact that it, is obviously not real, but it has that sort of frightening look to it because it's actual real makeup. Like I'm already missing that, even though, we haven't gotten too far into the CGI way of having those effects always done that way.
Yeah. But, when you bring up CGI, we should probably also make a note that in Terminator 2, they introduced the T-1000, the CG version, and it was revolutionary for the time. And I mean, it still holds up pretty well.
Yeah, the basically the liquid mercury version of the Terminator that changes all forms and had that iconic shot of him passing through the bars and his gun gets stuck. Ugh. Yeah,
which just blew people's minds at the time. Like they couldn't wrap their mind around how they had done that effect.
James Cameron the guy is just a genius. I know he disappears for 20 years at a time, but the guy is just incredible.
Well,
all right, that was fun. We'll just throw out a couple more without much more explanation. I think, like you mentioned, the H.R. Giger alien is, I think, the most iconic creature in the history of film, probably without much question.
Yeah, I think it's the obvious number one for this question.
It's gotten its due, so we don't have to go too much into that.
Sure.
One I'll throw out that's sort of out of left field, though. The creature effects for a horror film, I think from either the late 80s or early 90s, called Pumpkinhead.
I remember that, yes.
The creature effects for that movie were frightening.
That was actually, in addition to being frightening, that creature was designed by makeup effects legend Stan Winston, and I believe it was also his directorial debut too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I just have I don't remember much about that movie, but I remember
the creature.
I remember the creature and being legitimately taken aback at how creepy that thing looked.
Yeah. So I've got one that's kind of a bit of a curveball. What about the original giant life-size Jabba the Hutt creature from Return of the Jedi?
Okay.
Back before he was kind of replaced with horrible CG iterations in later films. The original one was a life-size animatronic puppet that basically had 12 puppeteers inside of him controlling all the motors and servos that worked his face, and then the operating the arms and the tail and the body. I mean, this thing, it was freaking huge, and I mean, I think it still today just holds up incredibly well.
It really does, yeah. You'd think that wouldn't hold up, but man, that shot where Leia is choking him out, and his tongue is like twitching, and his tail is twitching, and he's got his tongue sticking out. I mean, super effective. It's so funny that you mentioned Jabba the Hutt, because another one that I was going to throw in really quick was from that exact same movie, the Rancor.
Right. Yeah.
That Jabba actually sends Luke down to fight, and I remember that's another one from obviously our youth. I think that came out in '83, and that's another one where the sight of that as a kid scared me. Like, whoa, I might have been a little bit too young for that one too, but it's Return of the Jedi. I was like 7 or something.
Yeah, nobody thought twice about sending their kids to a Star Wars movie.
Yeah. All right, come back. We're going to talk about some trailers. Trailer segment time, everyone's favorite segment. We have a few movies to talk about here. We're going to start off with, timely, Halloween, which is released this weekend. This, of course, is yet another in the series of the Halloween movies. It's not a remake.
No, it is clearly in the series.
Yeah, it is. It stars Jamie Lee Curtis. It stars Will Patton. It is directed by David Gordon Green, whose most notable film is Pineapple Express.
Yeah, that's an odd pick.
It's a strange thing there. So, trailer, I thought it looked pretty interesting as far as a movie that you already understand the property. I constant evergreen caveat for both of us. Neither one of us are big horror film fans. So, I think that movie benefits obviously from it has history, and it has one of the best theme songs of any horror movie ever.
Yes, that is true. Everyone knows it.
You play that, you know exactly what you're getting.
Written by John Carpenter.
Yep. So this just appears to be one of those movies that's being pitched as the final chapter, where she's going to finally kill Mike Myers. That's what the whole trailer is about.
I'm sure there
we know it's not going to be.
5 previous Halloween movies that have been pitched as the final one.
And the next one will be Halloween, The Next Generation or something. That may have actually already happened. I don't know.
Probably. Absolutely.
Any reaction to that trailer at all?
I mean, I thought it looked good. I thought the director actually, whether he was attempting to or not, I thought he captured John Carpenter's style pretty well. The thing that I've always liked about the Halloween films is, I mean, in addition to sort of the idea that they're just, a serial killer film, they're not really meant to be supernatural, although that's what they ended up becoming. Mm-hmm. But this one goes back to that sense of this is just, this bad thing that's in the middle of blank white bread generic American suburbia, and that's where the Halloween movies belong.
Yeah.
Then they also have a heavy Terminator 2 vibe to it. You get the feeling
stalking.
That Jamie Lee Curtis has just hardened herself for the purpose of destroying Michael Myers in the same way Linda Hamilton did to destroy Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator 2. You feel that connection really, really strongly.
I did like how in the trailer, and I guess they've established this. I have not seen nearly all of the Halloween movies, but I liked how they established just how personal this is for the Jamie Lee Curtis character.
Yeah,
she's
absolutely
on a mission in this movie.
Yeah. That was a nice touch, and it's probably the most intriguing thing about the film.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's just probably good for your typical horror movie scares.
Yep. Your prototypical jump scares over and over and over again.
And it does seem to have a strong, like, the holiday Halloween feel to it, which I think is always a nice touch.
Yeah. I didn't really get that vibe from some of the other Halloween movies, like the one or the two that I've seen. And I don't remember the original too well. I've seen it in the last 5 years, but it's just not my genre. So
that, and it's one of those movies that, yes, it established the formula for horror movies, for the slasher genre coming after it, and you have to give it that respect. But because it's the first time you see all of that stuff, it's like the really crude version of all of it. Mm-hmm. It's all been polished and perfected to such a high degree subsequent to that film that going back and watching the original one, it all feels kind of slow and dull in comparison.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see that they still are using the iconic William Shatner face.
Mask,
Yeah.
famously, yes. The Michael Myers mask is a Captain Kirk rubber mask that was just spray painted white.
Yep. Fun little piece of trivia now that a lot of people used to not know, but I'm pretty sure everyone knows now.
Yeah, it's got to be one of the more famous pieces of trivia now.
Yeah. All right, next one up is we're going to take a very, very short trip into kids' movies. We don't do that very often on the show. The Kid Who Would Be King. This is directed by Joe Cornish, whose only credit that I recognized was Attack of the Block.
Right, which was really well received. UK sci-fi horror movie from, just 4 or 5 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Probably longer now that I think about it, because that was the film that got John Boyega noticed enough to move out to Los Angeles and take a crack at breaking into Hollywood. And of course, we know that led to Star Wars, and it's all history from there.
Yeah, so this one is yet another retelling of the Sword in the Stone, the King Arthur thing, where he literally pulls the sword out of the stone. Not too much of a metaphor on this one. Pretty literal.
It's set in current day, so you've got a modern day setting. A kid finds the sword in the stone, pulls it out, and that makes him the once and future King of England.
Yeah, and the movie looks fun. There's hijinks with he's trying to hide what's going on from his parents, of course.
It's very Spider-Man feeling to me.
Yeah.
There's lots of scenes of him in the bedroom with his best buddy, and he's like holding Excalibur, and all the sorts of like comedic one-liners from the chubby best friend that you got in Spider-Man. You also get in this trailer.
Yeah, the old chubby best friend, one of the great traditions in movies.
Especially kids movies, man. You can't make a good kids movie without a chubby best friend. Yeah.
Somewhere there's an agent telling a parent, hey, you need to make sure your kid stays nice and fat and chubby so we can make some money for you. That conversation has happened.
There's also a real strong Harry Potter vibe to this too, by nature of it being school kids in England.
Yes, every movie that has kids and has British kids has a strong Harry Potter vibe to me now.
Right.
Inescapable.
Seeing this trailer reminds me of how, this always happens. Whenever there's like a big successful movie, there's always a series of movies that are just a little bit different, but are clearly trying to cash in on that same thing. You had the Percy Jackson films for a while that were doing it, and I feel like this is, somebody looked around and was like, hey, we need a new Harry Potter. So here we go.
Yep. Next one up is a movie called Solus. This stars Stephen Ogg. If you don't know who that is, and you probably don't.
Oh, you do not.
He is best known, I think, for his role as Simon on The Walking Dead, the henchman number 2, or the number 2 guy behind Negan in The Walking Dead. So I'm not real sure why they decided to make this movie. It's directed by a gentleman named Carl Strathy. It's his directorial debut. And I'll be honest, I was bored pretty quickly. And then started working on some more show prep. So I'm going to let you talk about this for a minute.
Well, if you saw the movie Moon, it's basically like that. It's a science fiction film with a single cast member. And the entire film just follows him as he deals with one life-threatening crisis after another. It, clearly had a very, very small budget, and they were hanging everything on the ability of Stephen Ogg to just be super compelling every step of the way. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. It's kind of hard to tell from the trailer. To be fair, if you just watch the trailer to Moon, you probably aren't blown away by that. But then you watch the actual film and you're like, whoa, this is a very, very strong movie.
Yeah, there was some talent there.
Yeah, so it's possible that we'll get another thing like this. But for the most part, it's just clear that they stole that formula and they're trying to recreate the same magic again. And hey, maybe they pulled it off. I don't know. Good luck with that.
Rental.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, last one, and I think sort of the most stunning of the group, which isn't saying a whole lot, is a movie called Destroyer. This stars Nicole Kidman in a way I've never seen Nicole Kidman before. Think of Charlize Theron in Monster when they attempted to make her look homely. So this looks like another sort of action-y revenge type movie starring Nicole Kidman. It is directed by Karen Kusama, whose most notable movies I noticed on her filmography were Girl Fight, Aeon Flux, and Jennifer's Body, and then she did a bunch of television after that. So she's kind of taken a break from features.
That makes sense because all three of those films were bad. I got to be honest, this trailer does nothing for me. Visually, it looks just weak.
Yeah.
It all hinges on Nicole Kidman's performance, but you got to get past a lot of wigs and makeup to really get to that performance. I don't know.
Yeah, I was intrigued by it just for the fact that it's Nicole Kidman in a way I've never seen her before. I've never seen her looking this sort of intense in a movie, and just different and gritty. And I'm just not used to that with her. So I'm curious to see it. Probably not in theaters,
right?
But the performance looks like one of those where they're trying to just push the performance as hard as they can, more than anything else, to garner attention for the movie.
Right. And just a side note for genre fans and superhero fans, Sebastian Stan is the co-star of this film, so that
Winter Soldier,
that alone might give people a reason to go see it.
Yeah, they didn't really. I mean, I guess they featured him fairly prominently in the trailer, but I felt like they could have made a bigger deal out of that to try to take advantage of that demographic.
Yeah, I think you're right, and they probably should have done that. On the other hand, I sort of feel like the trailer might give you a misguided belief in how much he's going to be in the film.
Right, yeah. All right, well, that's pretty much all we got for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you have any feedback for us, you can hit us up on Twitter @TechBloodPod. And just let us know how you feel about what we're doing for you so far. Give us some topic suggestions if you like. We're fine to kick any of those around, and we'll do this again next week. Anything else you want to add towards the end here?
No, in fact, you don't even have to wait a week. Just a couple more days, and we'll have another episode for you.
Oh yeah, there is that.
Yeah. It's a twofer.
Yeah, maybe you should just hit me up on Twitter to help me close these shows out better, because I'm really bad at this.
Yeah. Along those lines, I'm looking for a co-host.
All right, guys. Join us again in a couple of days for our next episode on Technical Blood. See you next time.
See you guys.